And of course, today is April the 14th, and some pretty big events occurred on this date. As a link in a file, I note that it was this date that Abraham Lincoln was shot at Ford's Theater. He passed away the next morning. We have the anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine this date. And here in Cincinnati, of course, the birthday of the late, great Pete Rose, who died just last year. But it was also on this date, 113 years ago, that the RMS Titanic struck the iceberg that ultimately led to its sinking the following morning. And right now, there's a major interactive Titanic exhibit taking place downtown here in Cincinnati. It's called Titanic, an Immersive Voyage, and we thought we would have its executive director, John Zaller, on the phone. So, John, good afternoon and happy Monday.
Good afternoon, Mike. Thank you so much. And yes, we are commemorating the loss of the RMS Titanic on these very days.
And we should also mention that this year is the 40th anniversary of when the wreck was discovered. Obviously, there was tremendous loss of life in this disaster. It was a horrific tragedy. But what are some of the factors that this disaster, 113 years later, make it still very captivating, very interesting among many people, most people?
Well, Titanic really is the Greek tragedy of our modern era. When you think about the entire series of unrelated events that led to this incredible ship meeting this specific iceberg at a location in the middle of the North Atlantic at a specific time, it really does lend itself to thinking about the hand of fate that may have put the iceberg there, may have put the ship there. There's so many stories that wrap around and come out of the Titanic story. And the more we learn about the ship, like, for example, 40 years ago when Dr. Robert Ballard discovered it, the more we see that there is to learn about Titanic. It's like peeling an onion. You're always finding something else. You're finding another passenger story. You're finding another piece of scientific evidence. You're finding new discoveries as we study the wreck site. So it's an ongoing story that continues to fascinate us, primarily because of all of those factors that combined to bring about Titanic's creation, but also its demise.
Yeah, when it was first launched, it was considered by many unsinkable. I mean, this was the most brilliant form of human intelligence ever, and here it is on its maiden voyage. But as you said, it wasn't just one event. There were several events that kind of coincidentally occurred, and that's, as you said, the hand of fate sometimes steps in.
That's right, Mike. I mean, and we go through a lot of this at Titanic and Immersive Voyage, and we have a lot of that info at expo-titanic.com. But the Titanic was called to be practically unsinkable by the Shipbuilder magazine, and that quickly translated in the parlance of the time to an unsinkable ship. That was due to this new technology of her watertight compartments, which could seal off any compartment if by chance it was ruptured. And the front 5 sections of Titanic's hull and front sections of the watertight compartments could all have been punctured, and the ship could have stayed afloat. The ship could have survived a side impact with any 4 compartments being flooded and still stay afloat. But 6 of Titanic's compartments were breached, and this proved to be untenable for the ship. Eventually, the water would go over the tops of those compartments because it didn't go all the way to the top of the ship, and slowly go to the back, which is why Titanic went down by the head over the course of 2 hours and then essentially split in two given the weight of the water against the ship itself.
I kind of remember when it was discovered. Was it Robert Ballard who discovered it in '85? And what took so long for them to even find the remnants of? I know it was pretty deep.
So 2.5 miles beneath the surface of the ocean. So that is, that's quite deep. You can't, obviously, you need special equipment to get there. There were some efforts right at the beginning to locate the ship, but the technology didn't exist at the time to get to that depth. Then we got into several world wars and a Cold War that took our attention away from something like the Titanic tragedy. And then Dr. Robert Ballard had this idea that he knew where the ship was, and he had the special equipment he wanted to develop. So he went to the U.S. Navy and he said, I've got this idea for a submersible that could dive to these depths and study the area to discover the Titanic. And they said, that's great. We can help you develop that technology, but first you have to do something for us. And so they developed this technology, but they sent Ballard on a mission to identify 2 submarines that had been lost in the 60s, patrolling the North Atlantic. They told him, if you find these subs and there's enough time left in the mission, then we'll let you go ahead and look for Titanic. He did find those subs, and he had a couple days left, so he redirected the ships towards the coordinates he had in mind. And on the last day of his mission, in the evening, they started to discover these pieces that turned out to be sections of the ship from the debris field. Ultimately discovered one of Titanic's massive boilers, and then sure enough, they were on the bow section of the ship. And he brought back some incredible images right away from that initial discovery.
And I guess the ship, as it sank, I think people think, well, it just fell straight, but it actually broke into 2 pieces, and they're pretty far apart, I guess, on the seabed.
They're about a half mile apart, and so, but the debris field around it is a couple miles in diameter. So there's some recent theories about how the ship broke up, which is that it essentially cracked in half along the main keel plate, but it didn't completely break. It more that the head section went down, and it dragged the stern section down with it. They did travel together towards the bottom of the ocean as some content spilled out, but most likely didn't break up until closer to the bottom of the ocean because of the size of that debris field. And although the sections are fairly far apart, if they had split up on the ocean surface, they probably would have been further apart.
Really? So
that's a recent theory that's been developed in terms of how the ship broke up. That keel section that was laid, that initial section that was laid, was built in 1909, and that's the same year that the iceberg that sank Titanic broke off of the coast of Greenland and became an iceberg floating in the sea, making its way up north to the Arctic Circle, then coming back down to eventually reach the Titanic. So we talk about the hand of fate. The same time Titanic's being built, its iceberg is already formed.
So they could even they even know exactly which iceberg did the deed, as they say.
Well, there's been a lot of study over the years by natural historians of the way icebergs calve off the coast of Greenland and the way they travel. And essentially, it's been determined that as iceberg broke off in the spring of 1909, made its way north along the coast, and then it gets caught in the Labrador Current and brought back down along the coast of Canada. And the moon was closer to the Earth that year, so it created greater tides, which kept that iceberg off the coast, off the Labrador coast, so it didn't stall. And then the water temperatures were 10 degrees colder than they typically were at that time of year, which allowed icebergs to travel further south into the transatlantic shipping lanes, right into the path of the most glorious ship ever built.
Wow. So I know there have been many, many books, movies, documentaries, but your show, your experience takes it one step further. And I know that, you can read about something in a book, but to actually kind of, and I won't say live it because you don't really live it, but to take it one step further as far as 3 dimensions, maybe you could talk about the exhibit.
Sure. I mean, we actually give you a chance to, live it in quotes when people arrive at the exhibit, Titanic and Immersive Voyage, they actually get a boarding pass. And that boarding pass has a name on it that is an actual passenger who sailed on board the Titanic. And as you go through the experience, we have several room recreations. We've recreated a section of the ship that you enter through the D-deck door into the way the first-class passengers entered. You pass by the first-class dining room. You're able to visit the grand staircase and then go into our immersive room where we have a 30-minute immersive experience. But at the end of the exhibit, there's a memorial wall. And on that memorial wall, the name of your passenger is somewhere on that wall that's on that boarding pass. And you can see whether your passenger survived or was lost in the sinking. And that's a really powerful moment for people where the reality of the story really hits home because, you lived, in quotes, or you died on that night. And it's a very powerful emotional moment for people. One of the things that we do as well in our immersive gallery, this is the same place where Van Gogh, the Immersive Experience was, and Monet, the Immersive Experience was. So we have this 6,000 square foot immersive room with 30-foot high ceilings with projection in 360 all around you. We tell you the whole story of Titanic from why she was created in the first place, which was the massive waves of immigration that were coming to the United States, people from all over Europe coming to America in search of a better life. So bigger and bigger ships were built to accommodate all of these travelers. We tell you the story of the coal strike that redirected a lot of people to Titanic. And then in this immersive gallery, you get to see the entire ship being built around you. It's a really powerful moment where you see from her keel plate to the engines, to the boilers, to every one of the classes being built. And it's an incredible, breathtaking experience. And from there, we take you on the journey of the ship. You enjoy your time at sea. You enjoy the beauty of the view from the boat deck where a lot of the lifeboats have been removed to give you that incredible view, but that also reduced the capacity of lifeboats for the passengers on board the ship down to 30% of Titanic's total capacity, but because Titanic was traveling less than full, it was about half of the people on board would have had a seat in the lifeboat. And then we have that fateful encounter with the iceberg where it literally appears out of nowhere because of a atmospheric condition where there was a low-lying fog that hid the iceberg until the last minute. And then we take you through Titanic's final hours. As you're sitting in a lifeboat yourself in the immersive gallery, we have a replica of 2 full-size lifeboats that you can sit in as part of the experience and watch Titanic's final hours, hearing her wireless messages going out as she's crying for help. And there's nothing you can do about it. And that's another really powerful, empathetic connection you have with the passengers on board in those lifeboats because they couldn't do anything about it either.
And you have a few actual artifacts from the Titanic as well?
We do. We have more than 100 artifacts that are collected from Titanic and her sister ships Britannic and Olympic, as well as the Carpathia, the rescue ship, and the body recovery ships Mackay Bennett and the SS Minia. So we're able to broaden the scope of the Titanic storytelling to bring all these other ships who were involved in that story into the story to give you a broader context of the overall Titanic narrative.
I remember when I was younger, there was a movie, Raise the Titanic, and I think they were going to put these big air things and float it back up. But in reality, the remains of the ship are actually deteriorating pretty fast.
So the Titanic, the wreck of the Titanic, especially the bow section of the ship, it still has its magnificent shape. It is slowly collapsing on itself. It's being consumed by iron ore-eating bacteria. Some theories hold that it'll be gone in a matter of years. More recent research has told us that this section of the ship will probably be there for a couple few hundred more years, but it will continue to collapse. I mean, when you look at the new side scan and sonar images of the ship versus those original images that we got from Dr. Ballard all those years ago, you do see that its shape is the same, but a lot has changed in terms of the cosmetics. And that's really those iron ore-eating bacteria that are slowly consuming the superstructure of the ship from, at a cellular level. It'll be with us for some time still. It will be changing. But hopefully with shows like Titanic and Immersive Voyage, we'll be able to preserve Titanic's legacy for much longer than the ship will be there on the bottom of the ocean.
We're speaking with John Zaller, who's the producer of Titanic and Immersive Voyage. And as the producer, this show wouldn't be possible, say, 15 or 20 years ago. Maybe you could talk about the toys that you have had thanks to technology of virtual reality headsets and things like that that have given you more opportunities to tell this story in a realistic way.
The new technologies make a huge difference in terms of telling the Titanic story because we can place you there like never before. So you mentioned virtual reality, Mike, and we do put you in a VR headset and you actually dive to the wreck site of the Titanic and you see the wreck, the bow section of the wreck in all of its glory, sitting there in the bottom of the ocean as this final witness to the Titanic tragedy. It's so realistic that you can see the bow section of the wreck better than if you dove to the wreck yourself in a submersible. Because in a submersible, you can really only look through a 12-inch diameter window. But here, you're standing on an open ocean platform thanks to the magic of virtual reality, and you can see the entire wreck kind of in one glancing view. We have this beautiful, slow tour around the wreck where you can take it all in, and it's truly magical to see it in that way.
So I understand there are time tickets. About how long does the experience last? How much time should someone plan for this? And is it appropriate for kids?
So kids love the Titanic exhibition. As a matter of fact, we were just featured in the New York Times as part of a story on kids' fascination with the Titanic. It's a subject that is very serious, and so has to be treated with a certain amount of reverence and kid gloves, if you will. But it's something that has tons of learning opportunities for children across the entire STEAM curriculum. You've got all the science and technology and engineering and math that went into building the ship, and that's what fascinates a lot of kids. There's dinosaurs and there's the Titanic. Those are probably the two biggest fascinating things for kids, and it kind of goes in age groups. We hear this from parents who come in. So it's definitely appropriate for kids. I would say to plan for about 60 to 90 minutes. There's a great audio tour. There's a lot to learn, a lot to discover, a lot of reading of text panels. You've got a 35-minute immersive show, and then you also have the virtual reality, which takes about 10 to 15 minutes. So that's already a good part of an hour. And then as you get into the artifacts and the sets and the additional learning in the exhibit, you can definitely spend another 30 minutes in there. So you can learn a lot more about this at expo-titanic.com.
Okay, expo-titanic.com, and I think you can pick the city, pick Cincinnati, and it'll tell you all about that. Speaking of Cincinnati, I understand there's kind of a Cincinnati connection. I didn't realize that there was at least a former Cincinnati. One of the heads of Strobridge Lithography lost his life on the ship. I forget the gentleman's name. Albert Stewart, maybe?
Albert Stewart, yes. He was a well-to-do printer who did a lot of big publications in printing. He was one of these up-and-coming, upper-middle-class folks who had made his fortune through industry. He was enjoying the riches of his success and was traveling around Europe. And he decided to come back on Titanic because of the magic of its maiden voyage, the biggest ship ever built, the unsinkable ship, the rivaling the finest hotels in Europe in terms of its luxuries. He did cross as a first-class passenger coming back, but unfortunately, he did not survive the sinking. But he did what so many first-class gentlemen did: observe the rule of the sea, stay calm, and encourage others around him, women and children in particular, to get in a lifeboat, and reassured them that there was another boat for him and he would see them soon. But unfortunately, there wasn't another lifeboat for him, and he was lost. Edith Louise Rosenbaum also is from Cincinnati, and she had moved to New York City. She was a fashion writer who was studying the fashion shows in Paris and came back on Titanic. She did get in a lifeboat, and she was able to. She did survive, and she had a mechanical pig, potentially because of her love of Porkopolis. And that mechanical pig kept all the passengers in the lifeboat a little bit more at ease throughout the night, because she would play the music, especially for the kid that were in the lifeboat. So there are a few Titanic Cincinnati connections like that.
Very good. Now, as producer, do you have a favorite part of this that you're very proud of? I'm sure you're proud of the entire exhibit, but is there something that just kind of wowed you and said, "Wow, this is my favorite"?
So I've actually produced several Titanic exhibitions over the years, starting with 25 years ago, and I will say that of all the exhibits I've done, I'm the most proud of this one.
Okay.
And in that, there are a couple of moments. One in the immersive gallery where you're seeing the entire ship being built around you. That gets me every time. It's incredible, the scope and the scale of it, and the hours that went into the hours and days and years that went into building the ship. And then the other one is what we talked about in the virtual reality, diving to that wreck site and seeing the wreck of the Titanic in a way that you really can only see here. It's every time I do it, and I've obviously done the virtual reality dozens and dozens of times, it still gets me. It still gets me like I'm there, and puts me in that place of reflection, thinking about what these 2,200 plus passengers went through on that night, tonight, April 14th, 1912.
Well, very good. Well, I really want to thank you for joining us on the anniversary day itself. And John Zaller, this is very exciting. This is Titanic, an Immersive Voyage. You can get information at expo-titanic.com. And once again, thank you so much for your time today. And this sounds like a real, just fascinating way to spend an afternoon.
Thanks, Mike. We're really thrilled to be in downtown Cincinnati. It's really thriving downtown, and we're a great part of a day or a weekend down there. We're right on West 4th Street, and we're open every day except for Tuesday.
Very good. Expo-titanic.com. Oh, do you have to order online, or can you walk up to the...
So the best way to reserve your time slot is online,
okay.
But you can certainly walk up, and we'll get you in as quickly as we can.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Mr. Zaller, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mike.
And we'll have traffic and weather coming your way and a little music after this. Support